Aurora Vale buried a Wayforge revival series that would have changed everything, and the reason they killed it is something they never wanted you to know. Not a script problem, not a ratings problem, a money problem nobody can actually explain because the numbers don't add up, the contracts don't match, and $81 million is sitting in a line item that traces to a show that was never made. You were never supposed to hear this. Because the deal wasn't just canceled, it was quietly absorbed, restructured, and buried inside 3 different budget cycles so nobody outside a handful of executives would ever ask where the money went. And the person who could explain it left the company 11 months later with a settlement and a non-disclosure agreement thick enough to stop a subpoena. It started in the spring of 2021. Aurora Vale, still chasing subscribers in the streaming wars, needed a flagship. Showrunner Mara Kessler pitched a prequel to Wayforge, the fantasy series that had quietly built a cult following a decade earlier on cable. Kessler's pitch wasn't a cash-in. It was a 5-season arc, mapped out scene by scene, with a Bible thick enough to make executives compare it in internal emails later obtained by industry reporters to the next tentpole. Casting had already begun. A director was attached. For 18 months, this wasn't a rumor. It was real, funded, and moving. By January 2022, Aurora Vale had signed Kessler to an $81 million overall deal spanning the Wayforge prequel and 2 additional projects. The trade press covered the signing. Insiders confirmed a full first-season order, 10 episodes, greenlit, with a production start date set for that October in Vancouver. Sets were being scouted. Below-the-line crew had contracts. A leaked internal budget document put Season 1 at $34 million alone, a number that only makes sense for a show a studio believes in completely. This wasn't development limbo. This was a machine already running. Then, in the summer of 2022, a merger conversation began, quiet at first, then loud enough that Aurora Vale's parent company started restructuring its content slate around a different, more conservative strategy. Suddenly, big swings were liabilities. Executives who had championed Kessler's vision were being reassigned or pushed out, and the accounting started to shift too. Production costs already spent on Wayforge began appearing, oddly, under unrelated cost centers. Nobody canceled the show publicly. It just stopped being mentioned. Here's the part they really buried. The official story, the one that eventually leaked to trade outlets, was that Wayforge got caught in a routine post-merger content cleanup. One of dozens of shows quietly dropped to cut costs. That's not what happened. Internal finance documents show the show wasn't cut because it was too expensive. It was cut because it was about to become too successful, and success would have triggered a back-end profit participation clause in Kessler's original contract. A clause tied to the underlying rights holder, not Aurora Vale, that would have forced the platform to share future spin-off revenue for a full decade. A rival executive, brought in during the merger specifically to protect margins, discovered the clause during a rights audit and killed the show not because it would fail, but because it would succeed on someone else's terms. The $81 million already spent didn't disappear. It was reclassified as a development write-down and folded into an unrelated tax filing, which is why, to this day, no public financial disclosure lists Wayforge as ever having existed at all. The paper trail was engineered to make a real, funded, nearly produced show look like it never left a notepad. Remember that signed deal, the sets already built, the October start date. That's where it died, not on a page, but in a spreadsheet, deliberately restructured so no one could ever trace the cancellation back to a single decision or a single name. Think about what that means for the industry watching. If a studio can bury a fully greenlit, fully budgeted production and make the money vanish into unrelated line items, there is no accountability left at all, no shareholder, no journalist, no fan can ever prove what was killed and why. Wayforge would have redefined what a streaming original could be, an anchor property built to run 5 seasons deep, and instead it became a ghost in a ledger. The audience that would have loved it never even got the chance to know it existed. So the question worth sitting with is this: how many other quietly dropped, shows on how many other platforms were never failures at all, just contracts that got too expensive for someone in power to keep, and profits somebody with a bigger salary decided not to share. Because Aurora Vale isn't the only studio with a rights audit nobody talks about. And the next one might be closer to home than you think.